Betsy DeVos gave the commencement speech at historically black college, Bethune-Cookman in Florida, and the students there had a bit of I don't know, problem with that, right? So we know Betsy DeVos is the Secretary of Education in the Trump administration. She was given that job because she basically bought it. She is a big proponent of school privatization, under the nomenclature of school choice. She's a religious zealot. Her brother is the head of, I want to say, Blackwater?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Blackwater.
Which no longer exists, but yeah, same guy.
Is it Academy now? Academy? Is that what it is?
He's got a couple of them, including one where he's actually creating a private army for China. So it's a weird.
Great. Yeah, he's a real bucket of laughs.
Yep.
And we remember Betsy DeVos' her last engagement with a historically black college was when she went to Howard unannounced, and the students at Howard, basically, protested her appearance because, again, unannounced, and they don't like what she stands for. So she was invited to speak at Bethune-Cookman, and the students at the commencement, they were told if they didn't show up, they wouldn't be receiving their diplomas, I believe, at one point.
Yeah, he said something on stage about how, like, your diploma will be mailed to you, and it's like, aren't they always?
Yeah. I know. I think they gave us
essentially they were going to stop the ceremony if they didn't stop. And she was speaking before. Obviously, they had collected their diplomas, so the ceremony would have been over if they didn't stop. Is the threat? Go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So basically, they all turned her back. They all turned their backs on her, booed, and it is what it is. As right now, I believe the NAACP is requesting the resignation from a lot of people who work at Bethune-Cookman, a lot of the head administrative staff who decide to bring her there to speak. And so I bring this up because I think we haven't really had a conversation about this myth of value neutral platforming. Platforming as the general trend, right? There's this myth that you can invite somebody to speak at your commencement like Condoleezza Rice or like, Betsy DeVos. I want to divorce this conversation from the Richard Spencer and, I want to divorce the conversation from Richard Spencer and the Ann Coulter scenarios, because I think we've talked about that enough, and line this up more with people like Brett Stevens getting columns at the New York Times. There's this idea that you can just have this value neutral platforming of what is essentially a radical right wing idealist or ideologue, and that doesn't say anything about your organization or you. And so the NAACP is requesting resignations, and they're right to. And all I'm waiting for now is a bunch of articles in the Washington Post and New York Times decrying the fact that these students wouldn't even listen to this, wouldn't listen or engage within the discourse. Whatever, guys, whatever. It wouldn't engage in conversation or respectful discourse with Betsy DeVos. And it's like, but she's already proved herself to be incompetent, guys. It's like, how many times we have to have this conversation with these same people that are incompetent? And I know you had an interaction with David Frum.
Yeah, no, it wasn't with David Frum. It was actually with the creator of The Wire, where he was retweeting David Frum, and I basically said, you can make the same point without retweeting this accessory to war crimes. And he said, this is the disease of this left. And he said, I'm a leftist, and this is the disease of this ideas where we can't allow certain people to speak. And I said, no, you can allow them to speak, but why are you retweeting a war criminal and then acting like that's not an immoral decision? Like, this guy should not be should not be employed at the Atlantic, first off. I mean, he should be being tried at The Hague along with our ex-presidents. But instead, he's added as this voice of reason. And again, it gets back to the whole Trump thing, but we're not even talking about that. Let's just say, take the idea out of it. The fact that anyone is retweeting him is beyond the pale for me.
Well, no, I agree with you. And I think the same thing goes with people who, like if I read about the Betsy DeVos situation, this idea that I can retweet David Frum, I can retweet Henry Kissinger. Does he have a Twitter? I don't know. I can't believe that he's not actually dead and just like a ghost or whatever. He's so fucking old and awful. But anyway,
I can't wait. I'm gonna have a party the day that he dies.
Yeah, I mean, I'll come. I don't care. Anyway, right, but that is, you can retweet articles from Breitbart. You can retweet these things, and it says nothing about your ideology. It says nothing about your morality. And but the obvious counter to the point that the guy was making, the creator of The Wire was making, is that if this person wasn't who they were, you wouldn't be retweeting them, right?
Right.
It's you're not retweeting David Frum because he came up with this great new unique idea, and the only way for you to encapsulate it would be to retweet the original owner, or at least to pay him some kind of pay him his due for coming up with it. Yeah, pay him his due for coming up with it. You're retweeting him because he is a right-wing ideologue. You're retweeting him because of who he is. And you're trying to borrow the legitimacy that someone like David Frum is on your side, or I thought that Brett Stevens is writing at your paper, but you don't want to engage with the entirety of their work, right? You don't want to engage with, he said it was a disease of the liberal mind or some nonsense, but it's like, no, I'm just judging you for like platforming awful people.
Correct. And that gets back to DeVos. I mean, DeVos has literally said that we need to push for reforms in education to bring us towards the path of God, I think was their exact words. It was something along those lines. And it's kind of like, how is it that you can say she's a viable person to have on any college that's not a Christian right-wing college? I mean, if you're a Christian right-wing college, Betsy DeVos is the commencement speaker for you. Go at it. I mean, she's ideologically right in line with you. But if you're if you're any college, honestly, that's it. She's done.
Especially if you're an HBCU, because she called HBCUs pioneers in school.
Pioneers of choice.
Pioneers of school choice.
Yeah.
She said that institutions that were built as responses to Jim Crow and segregation, and that I would argue people still attend to this day because of the proliferation of hate crimes on campuses around, especially in the South, right? Especially where these places, like the idea that there is hate crimes on these campuses. We see, there were riots at Ms. U after Obama won re-election. It's like, so people go to these places to be, to have, they have an educational experience.
I was gonna say, how many emails I get a week from my ultra liberal arts campus in Washington State about people drawing racist graffiti, about people being attacked on campus, about the number of times I've had to go to the First People's Multicultural Center. The fact that we must have one on campus, and that's like the only safe space for a lot of students of color to go and have tutoring help or whatever, or just to go and not feel like we're constantly under the threat of attack or just ostracized at this university, is staggering.
Yes.
And I live in liberal ass Washington. I've quite honestly thought about transferring to an HBCU, and I'm heavily considering them for one of my requirements now for graduate school is I need to go to a university that is in a place with a large number of people of color, because I can't do this shit again.
Don't do Boston.
6 more years of being the only black man within 2 miles.
Don't do Boston.
There goes MIT.
MIT is a good school, and MIT is, I would say, probably racially diverse and actually not bad in that regard. But Boston itself is racist as fuck.
Well, I mean, the idea to use Betsy DeVos to broach this topic was kind of me just like, I don't know. It was a reach, but it's an important one, right? Because it keeps coming up, right? This idea that you can give space, and not only just space, right? Because people like to pretend like they think, well, we're just having a conversation, right? But this is not what that is. Like when you invite someone to be the commencement speaker at your school, when you give someone a column in the New York Times, when you decide to platform somebody and elevate their voices over others, you're making the decision that, hey, this person has things that are worth hearing, right? Because you're not platforming everyone. You're not inviting everyone to your school. They didn't invite, Betsy DeVos and then to be the warm up, and then in the second act it was going to be Reverend Wright. It's like that would have been a fire. That would have been like a fire, like commencement. Everyone would have loved that one. But like it's this idea to keep proliferating through like liberal media that the media I promote and consume and the outlets I consume and promote don't really say anything about my ideology or morality. It's such a disingenuous, like that little disclaimer they put on all of their little op-ed sections that the opinions expressed.
Real quick, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I just saw this in chat and it just came up. Michael Stapleton, because I want us to talk about this, because this is turning your back on a millionaire that controls your loan and college funding is not effective in your quote advocacy. So first of all, boo-boo, she don't control my loan. Well, she has stake in a company that does, well, A. B, she also doesn't control my school's funding in the sense that I don't go to a public K through 12 school, and a lot of schools, a lot of universities, in fact, get public funding. Not public funding in that sense, but public funding in the sense that they get it from the state. On top of that, HBCUs have an incredibly rich history of having to fundraise, my guy. Turning your back a racist Christian ideologue who has absolutely no business doing anything ever. It's a great move for advocacy, and quite honestly, to be quite honest, I'd have started a chant, "Fuck you, Betsy," but that's just me.
No, but see,
like that's me, and I'm extra.
But his comment talks to like the disingenuousness of like the liberal class, right? Yep. Maybe he's not liberal, I don't really give a shit, doesn't make any difference. But like this idea that like there is no proper way to resist things, right? It's like we're supposed to be having this marketplace of free ideas, but if I say, okay, well, you know what, I don't want to buy that one. I think that the Betsy DeVos's of the world are, you know, I've heard enough from them. I know what they're going to say. She's not going to surprise me. And if she is, like, or her history is too problematic for me to engage with. I don't care if David Frum is, you know, is releasing the hottest R&B album of 2017.
Before you go on, there's also one thing that they're ignoring, which is the power differential inherent in the arguments. Like what you're saying is, okay, well, the people who are just being disrespectful or whatever to Betsy DeVos, who are protesting Betsy DeVos, are at a distinct power disadvantage to Betsy DeVos. Anyone who, like myself, who's going after David Frum is at a distinct power disadvantage to David Frum. I mean, and it's not the same power disadvantage, but at the same time, there is a distinct disadvantage. So when you don't take that into account, you're in that argument that he was making, it's completely thrown out the window logically as well.
Because people want to pretend like it's fine, but like you should cancel your subscription to the New York Times. You absolutely should, and protest, because otherwise they won't fire him. It's like you are not being put on equal footing with Brett Stevens, who is going to just write article after article about climate denial. His first article came out,
and how much he hit Muslim.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, his first article came out and he tried to frame it in this way that, well, you know, there's a certain amount of volatility to predicting climate change, and the scientists who are acting like, well, you know, we have it down to a science are lying to you. He calls himself climate
science. We literally have it down to
no, but you know, same thing. Like he calls himself a climate agnostic, right? But what he's there to do is he's there to muddy the water. And what he's there to do is they say the temperature is going to go up by 3 degrees over the next 5 years, but it could be anything from 1 degree to 12 degrees. They don't know what they're talking about. It's like, do you realize how dumb that's just there to muddy the waters and and to sow doubt and manufacture that. Not only is he a climate change denier, but what got mixed up in that conversation, or lost rather, that he's also, you know, anti-black and anti-Muslim.
Yep.
It's like he called Islam the disease of the mind. Yeah, but so it's not even that they're having the conversation internally, right? But because they don't even have people, they don't even have pro BDS people in the New York Times op-ed section, do they?
No, I doubt it. I really don't think they do.
And I bring up the New York Times because they had an anti-choice op-ed in there the other day from a woman who was talking about how she was a teen mom, and now she's an investment banker, and that's why we can't treat, you know, abortion as though it's like an economic issue, because it's really not one.
Yeah,
but here's the thing, right? And that woman. Let me finish the statement though. That woman works for a group who calls abortion a modern day Holocaust.
Wow.
And it's just like these are the people that the New York Times is providing not only a platform for, but a certain amount, an air of legitimacy to. And you can't sit there and, you know, and not sound like you're fighting, you know, not sound like you're arguing semantics to say, well, you don't understand. At the top of the article, I put the little disclaimer: this person's views do not reflect that of the outlet. Like, yes, it does. Yeah, it at least reflects what you consider to be legitimate discourse. Like it at least reflects what you think is like legitimately in the bounds of what should be considered, and what you think is in the bounds
ideas.
the limits of your ideas. And honestly, the New York Times, it's like, as a liberal outlet, it has the range of its ideas range from climate denial to anti-Islam, but it doesn't go all the way to socialism or BDS. And again, that's that's in a nutshell.
I bet you they wouldn't even give a column to Matt Taibbi.
Of course not. Or David Dayen. They wouldn't give they wouldn't give a column to anybody who was espousing anti-establishment or anti-corporate ideas.
Let me ask you guys this question. Do you guys think they would have published any of our articles that we had recently, especially covering the bevy of topics that we did? I don't think that outside of places like PA, outside of independent media, we would have even had any snowball's chance in hell of having that kind of stuff published, because it directly counters the narrative that they're so used to putting out. And what they fail to realize is they are responsible for the actions people take after reading this. They are responsible for giving that woman a platform if someone who reads that then decides to go out and murder an abortion physician. So rather a physician who does abortions. They are directly responsible if someone goes out after reading that Islam is a disease of the mind and commits anti-Muslim hate crimes. You are directly responsible for that because you are giving them that platform. You are giving them that microphone in which to spread and get a much larger audience. And you lead to the direct radicalization of people when they do that. We hear all the time about how people are in the Middle East are being radicalized into radical Islam, but we never want to talk about how we radicalize our own people in America, especially those on the right. Yeah. And it starts with things like this. It starts with things that are considered innocuous. Climate change kills people. Anti-abortion groups kill people. Racist rhetoric gets people killed. These words have real life consequences, and we should not be giving these people platforms.
I mean, this is an important conversation only because people like to obscure what their own ideology is, right? They like to make these little vague statements about when they're defending white supremacists, or they're defending the right of Betsy DeVos or Charles Murray or Brett Stevens. They're defending their choice to keep patronizing the New York Times as something that's not indicative of some kind of moral failing on theirs. And I'm here to tell you that it is.
Yes.
It's just like when you retweet David Frum, you are validating the idea that he's a good person.
That's it. The death of 1 million people is no big
You're
deal.
validating it. And like this sort of desire to quibble over, well, why can't we just engage with people's ideas and not their whole being is stupid. Because frankly, if it wasn't their if you weren't engaging with their whole being, you would they're not hiring Brett Stevens because he's a good writer.
No,
because there are plenty of good writers. You're not tweeting David Frum because he has a good idea, because plenty of people have good ideas. You're tweeting him because you want the legitimacy of that. You want that right validation. You the people on the left are so afraid of appearing too on the left. And not only did fear appear to on the left, and this fear is born out of the fact that they aren't that on the left. Well, they want the validation of the right.
But that gets back to the whole thing, like I was talking earlier about the Clinton strategy, the DLC strategy of triangulation. I mean, they coined the phrase socially liberal, economically conservative. They weren't that liberal to begin with. As Adair was saying, there is no really liberal left. There's a neoliberal left, but there's not a real cohesive liberal left. They don't want to admit what their ideology is, because their ideology is so fucking unpopular and so against what it means and what has been taken for granted as the American way or the American dream, that's it. They have nowhere else to retreat to. So what, like you're saying, where they search for validation in coming to some sort of meeting of the minds with these right-wing ideologues, it's idiot. It's idiot.
Well, a lot of their validation comes from what liberals like to be the adults, right? That's a big part of their pathology. I'm the adult. People on the far left are childish, and this comes from the I'm not a big fan of David Graeber's work, but he makes this point in one of his books that a lot of the people who are now like center liberal elite media heads, they were leftists. They were. Look at Van Jones. Van Jones was a Maoist at one point. Angela was a Maoist, but like as they get older and they start making money, they start making capitulation after capitulation, they adopt this air that the people on the left are idealistic, like they're dreamers, they're childish, they're living in a fantasy world that just does the liberal position is the mature position, and I matured into it. They don't think no, I was corrupted into it.
Right,
which is what it is. I was corrupted into it, and so in a lot of ways, this is this is projection. And so when they look to the left, they think to themselves they feel a little bit of that, deep down, I'm doing the wrong thing.
Well, and also, but also
it reminds them of it, of the fact that they at the end of the day, they became morally bankrupt.
And it's also the lying about what the left really is. I mean, that gets to the whole like you just said, the idea that Bernie Sanders is some sort of Maoist communist is ludicrous. And the fact that his ideas are treated as ludicrous when really a lot of what he's talking about is going backwards in U.S. history towards social programs and making them more equitable. And it's like, you got to be kidding me.
Also, also you got to, and these social programs for, again, people who are actually Maoist or at least Leninist Marxist or whatever, they'll tell you that they all they do is serve to protect capitalism.
Right.
That's what a capitalist voter is. I know I said that word a lot. Now, it's someone who someone who capitulates to capitalism and ultimately installs some sort of half measures to make sure capitalism stays afloat. And so what I was going to say about the centrists, these centrist liberals who infect our media. I'm sorry, I meant infest our media. No, I did both same thing. Infect our media. It's here's why you can't trust the mainstream media, and here's why you can't trust anybody who gets too big. It's not an issue of corruption all the time. A lot of it's just an issue of demographics, and a lot of it is and also an issue of just standpoint. Anyone who has made their wealth, rather not anyone, let me be, put a little nuance in this. The majority of people who have made has found success within the system do not see the need to change it.
Right.
Because as you find success within the system, you start to believe in the meritocracy. And that's another reason why people believe that there's a big Russia conspiracy going on, because at least that validates the meritocracy. No one wants to believe that some dumb person was able to make millions of dollars in America and was also able to become president, just because our system is so easily gamed that it's that's a viable strategy. They would prefer to believe that there's a big conspiracy because at least that validates the meritocracy. It validates what they think be true about America. But
yes,
so, and I'll bring this back to the primary. And when I start, I'm sorry, the primary, when I started losing faith in a lot of members of left wing media and a lot of members of mainstream media who had been a little bit more judicious towards Bernie Sanders, it's when they started talking about their own personal lives and how Clinton wasn't going to be so bad, and how everything was going to be fine, and how their daughters and wives and grandmothers were so happy that they would have a female president. I get it now. It's you can't think outside of yourself. And right. So and I hate to rehash this lesser of two evils argument, but it's actually intrinsically connected to the whole Trump Comey thing, and that we have this habit as human beings, as people who think of ourselves as good people, of framing the lesser evil as the good, when honestly the lesser evil is just that. It's the less evil option. It's still evil, just a little bit less. Just like Diet Coke is a little bit less shit than Diet Coke is a little bit more shit than Coke Zero.